it's just an example. Purdue losing to Fresno State is okay. We can still win the Big Ten West. Me,
Billy Napier gets fired. I'm just kidding.
hey, really the best time of the year. I will be seated watching Red Zone for 7 hours on Sunday. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to an episode of Backyard Banter. Just Johnny and James here. If you know where Tanner is, let us know. He's MIA. We don't know where he is. He's somewhere wandering the streets of Lisle as we record this. But just me and James. And James, to be completely honest, me and you have two different moods in the college world and then two different moods in the NFL world. So we're going to start in college. Before we get to the Florida game, you were in West Lafayette to see the Notre Dame beatdown of Purdue with Tanner, with a few other guys that we're close with over there. Talk about how your experience. How was it over there?
It was great. I mean, it's my second big college football game I've ever been to. The first one was last year, Purdue, Illinois at Purdue. So, like, having Tanner, having Tanner as such a close friend is amazing, right? Because he's got these Purdue connections and whatnot. And so, shout out to Tanner. He's really hooked it up with getting me to games because truthfully, I never did growing up. So shout out to Tanner for that. But yeah, he talked about the Notre Dame Purdue game, and I'm like, yeah, I'll go. And then, after the loss and whatnot, I'm like, okay, we'll see. And it was amazing. There's a lot of Irish fans out there, a lot of green in the stands. And I told the guys at breakfast, I sat down at breakfast, we were eating donuts, and I said, guys, this should be a very boring football game if it's coached correctly. I said Notre Dame should run the football the entire game, and Purdue should run the football the entire game. Well, little did I know that it didn't matter what Notre Dame did, they were going to score a touchdown. We rushed for 360 yards. Like, Purdue had 4 rushing yards in the first half. And so I honestly none of my questions are answered. Sure, the beatdown looks amazing. If Notre Dame wants to get back in the playoff, they're going to have some of these games where they beat down on the bad opponents. I will say this. I think Purdue is god-awful. I think Notre Dame, don't get me wrong, I think they had some extra courage in them, but I think Purdue's just bad. I mean, they couldn't seal the edge to save their lives. Like, it's not like the offensive line played extremely well for Notre Dame. They were just getting to the outside. And next thing you know, Riley Leonard's running for 40 yards. I mean, Riley Leonard had 100 exactly. Had 100 rushing yards on 11 attempts. And everyone's like, man, why isn't he throwing the ball? Well, why would you? If you're gonna rush for 9 yards a carry and you're gonna have 3 tuds, don't throw the football. So I told the guys also at breakfast, one more thing. I said, I bet you Steve Angeli plays in the second half. I said that because I thought Riley Leonard was really going to struggle, and I thought the first half was going to be much tighter. Little did I know Steve Angeli was going to come out because it was 42-0. But Steve Angeli proved that he can spin it. I mean, he can throw the football. And as a junior on that roster, you got to be excited for being an Irish fan to know that there is a little bit of a future, hopefully, as a quarterback that can throw the football. He comes in, he throws the first passing touchdown of the season. Well, it's exactly what I expected. So, this looks good. Sure, 66-7. It's a good win. It's a great win. But I think Purdue's really bad. And I'm sure Tanner would say the exact same thing. That guy, I'm not sure Tanner watched any football. That guy, his nose was in a screen, like texting everybody, adding everyone on Twitter. I mean, he probably had 14 deleted tweets just because he was fired up. But, shout out to Tanner. Shout out to his family. It was a great opportunity to get out to that game. But, yeah, I mean, 360 rushing yards. You're never going to complain about that. So
that'll do it. Yeah, we don't give enough credit to the Sterrett family over there in West Lafayette.
No.
They always hook it up. I went to a game when they played Oregon State at home. It was a great atmosphere. I had a very great time. When I drove up from Florida for my internship, we stopped at Tanner's house, and they fed us steak and mac and cheese, and Miss Sterrett made us brownies.
Bro, we had burgers, mac and cheese, and brownies for dinner.
They throw down there. We love the Sterrett family on this podcast.
Yes, sir.
But even though there's no Tanner, plenty of love to the Sterrett. So that was the positive side of this podcast. Like, before we get into Florida, I'm going to say I always am so bad at saying at the end, like and subscribe if you are new. We just passed 350 subscribers, so that's exciting. We're just slowly clawing to the point where we can start making money off of it. But regardless, we're going to keep going. But before we get to Florida, a few other interesting scores in college football. I'm just going to kind of run through them a little bit. There's no such thing as a boring week in college football, but not that like marquee headline game. So LSU escapes South Carolina. That was a little bit of a headline. South Carolina up 17-0. LSU comes back, kind of takes care of business. Big win for LSU. Huge win for Brian Kelly. If you lose that game, a lot of questions start getting asked. I mean, that's a game you got to win, even though it's at South Carolina, a tough place to play. Alabama goes into Wisconsin and just domination. Alabama ran the ball whenever they wanted to. Ryan Williams, 17 years old, already like a top 10 receiver in the country. It just crazy.
Unreal.
What he can do at 17 years old. Georgia. This is a big one. Georgia struggled heavily against in Kentucky. Georgia has one of these a year, so I'm not like overly concerned. It's just something isn't clicking with that offense. When you look at Georgia, in the past they had some sort of receiving threat when you said, yup, like, that's the guy, whether it was Ladd, whether it was Brock Bowers, whatever it was. They don't have that this year. They have a lot of really decent receivers, but they don't have a Ryan Williams that Alabama has, for example. I mean, look, that Georgia, they're going to be Georgia. They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to do their thing. I'm still confident in my national championship pick, but that's a concern going forward. And I see stuff on Twitter that, God, Georgia's running backs can't pass pro. The reason why ETN split carries at Florida is because he couldn't pass protect. And so that shouldn't be a surprising thing. But, I mean, they escaped. Same thing as Missouri a few years ago. And then those were the few main games. Slate's bigger, a little bit bigger this week. But any of those stick out to you, James, before we get to Florida?
No, the Georgia-Kentucky game was just like, what is going on? Like, you look at that score constantly, throughout the night, and it's just like 13-12 for a Georgia football game against Kentucky. Like, Kentucky years past, and they're not a slouch. Right? There's no slouch in the SEC necessarily, but for Georgia, like, Kentucky is a slouch, right? Like, they should have gone in and handled Kentucky, but then again, whatever. Like you said, they have one of these games every year, so that wasn't a surprise. I like that Mizzou came back. That looked like a good football game.
That was another one.
LSU, obviously, a lot of these games were taking place while I was at the Notre Dame Purdue game, but they do a good job at posting up the other scores, around the league and country. So, but yeah, I would say those games for sure. You look at LSU, they got to win that game, and they did. They found a way to win that football game, and then same with Mizzou. So,
yeah, for sure. And I watched football all day yesterday with Tanner, so I know his Purdue thoughts. Obviously not happy, but Tanner says it in a lot of ways Purdue fans do, and it's a good way to think about it. Purdue, and it's tough to say that they'll never be a football power, so losses like those are a little bit easier for him than a Bears loss on Sunday night, just because that gap is there. So that was kind of Tanner's point of view. But I mean, the stadium emptying at halftime, regardless, is embarrassing. That's kind of also what he said. But anyway, let's get to Florida. Let's get to Florida. And if any of my dad's friends are here, hello, thank you, subscribe. But look, I'm gonna say this as not unbiasedly as I can, but try to be subjective. And I'm gonna start this by saying I think Billy Napier is a fantastic human being. He is a great person, and that's why it sucks so much more that he's not a good offensive play caller and he's not a good football coach at the University of Florida, because he's a great person, and he goes up there in the press conference after this game and there is not one, like, there's no more hostile environment than the press conference at the University of Florida after you just got blown out 2 times at home. The score was 33-20. That game was over midway through the second quarter. So the score, it doesn't show what accurately happened during the game. I say a lot when I do I said during the Miami game, I said before the Miami game, like, you're the University of Florida. Like, you need to do the XXNS. Right now, being the University of Florida doesn't matter for anything. People don't come to the Swamp in fear to play there anymore. And do you know how terrible it is to say? I've been to over 50, almost 100 Gator games, and you're telling me the Swamp isn't a feared place to play anymore? And I blame part of week 1 on the fans. I don't think we did our part. This game was not on the fans. They sat through a weather delay. It was pouring rain in the Swamp, and they were in there, and they're trying to be as loud as they can. Look, the big question is going to be on the quarterback. Florida doesn't have a quarterback problem in the aspect that it's not like they don't have sufficient quarterback play. They can throw one of those guys out there, and you're going to get above average quarterback play. The thing that bothers me is do not rotate them every single possession like Florida did. You pick one and you go with it, whether it's Graham, whether it's DJ. Right now, and this might be a hot take, I think right now on 9:26 Central Time on September 16th that Graham Mertz is a better quarterback than DJ Lagway. I think he can read a defense better. I think he can set protections better. And I think he's more equipped to take you in the SEC play. But if you want to go play DJ, I do not care. Just pick one. After I saw Graham Mertz lead a 75-yard touchdown drive where he threw a 40-yard bomb, I see DJ trot in. And I'm like, how are these guys going to get in any sort of rhythm? Like, and this thing was a thing that didn't happen during the game. This happened on Thursday. And it just boggles my mind that you just don't let one of them go and play. And DJ had a bad game because of it. I see all these people on Florida Twitter. And Florida Twitter is a very interesting place. And they're all trying to defend DJ. And DJ deserves some defending, but he just frankly wasn't good. And you can't expect an 18-year-old to come into an environment like this and throw for 450 yards every game. That's what I told you guys on the podcast. Like, he has all the talent in the world. He's up next. He, more than anybody coming in the last decade and probably in the decade upcoming, is the best chance to lead Florida national championship from the quarterback position. But right now might not be his time, and that is okay. Like, he's 18 years old. His time will come. All that was saying, Florida doesn't have a quarterback problem. Florida's skill positions are some of the top in the SEC. They got 3 receivers that can go. And not only go, I think that can be legitimate NFL caliber receivers. Elijah Badger can go. Chimere Dike can go. Trey Wilson, even though he didn't play against A&M, can go. They got 4 backs that can go. The problem is in the trenches. And at the University of Florida, in a state like Florida, you should never fail to recruit in the trenches. Are you kidding me? You can go to Berkeley Prep, that's 2 hours down the road, and go pull a left tackle. You can go to Plant High School, which is 15 minutes west of Berkeley, and go pull a right guard. You can go all the way down to St. Thomas Aquinas in Fort Lauderdale, Miami-Dade area, and pull a center. You can go up the street to Jacksonville and pull an edge rusher. And you're telling me just in the state of Florida alone, you cannot recruit sufficient enough to not only be competitive in the trenches, they got dominated. James, let me read you a number. Texas A&M, 55 rushes, 310 yards on the ground. That's 5.6 yards per carry. And it's not even like some of it was competitive. Like, yeah, Florida would stuff them now and then. But, I mean, we're talking Florida punts them down. Actually, credit to Billy for making the right decision and punting, even though the whole stadium wanted to go for it. Gets it down to the half-yard line. Okay, we'll try QB sneak to get a half more yard breathing room. 26-yard run, out of danger. 11 plays, 99-yard touchdown. At home, you know how many yards Florida had rushing? 52. And it's not like because they got down, they abandoned it. They ran it 25 times. That is a 2.1 yards per carry. And some of that is sacks. You know, DJ got sacked 4 times because he was running around with his head cut off. But that's where it is painful. Florida got them down to multiple third and longs. In the first quarter, in the first half alone, Texas A&M was 4-6 on third downs. Their average yard per distance was 10.1. That means their average third down was 3rd and 10. And they picked that up 4 times out of 6. What? Yeah. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And look, our secondary is doing their best they can. They're not good. They had 2 coverage breaks, which led to 2 massive touchdowns. But, I mean, no one can guard for 5 seconds. And you have no one that can win one-on-one. Everyone's like, man, this defense had 2 sacks, 12 tackles for loss against Stanford. It doesn't matter. That is a high school team. And against any sufficient team, you cannot get a pass rush. And all the heat is coming on Billy Napier, rightfully so. His offensive play calling is atrocious. His situationness, if that's even a word as a head coach, is very, very bad. But Ron Roberts, the guy they brought in, who's the architect of zone defense, saying he's going to come in and fix the defense, has not only regressed the defense, has regressed it down to being ranked in the mid-100s in the country. Do you know how many teams are in the country? There's like 126. So it's just mind-boggling that, again, at a school like the University of Florida, where it breeds everywhere. I'm just talking about Tampa, Miami, and Jacksonville, the 3 major metropolitans. You can go to Ocala and find a center. Like, you know, you can go to Daytona Beach, which is further down the road on the east side of the state, and find a left guard. And somehow they cannot. And they have 2 offensive line coaches, and they cannot develop and recruit well enough at the offensive line position. Every single time they get a recruit, it's either a running back or a wide receiver or a corner. Well, don't need those, frankly. You need guys that can dominate in the trenches because it doesn't matter who's the quarterback if they have 2 seconds to throw the football. But that's a long way by saying I am surprised that Billy Napier is still employed. I don't look. Do you want to fire a coach 3 games in? No. After this kind of start, do you almost have to? Yes. Do I think Billy Napier should be the only person fired? Absolutely not. I think Scott Strickland should be fired effective immediately. And I know there's stuff going on with the University of Florida and their president right now. They have an interim president because whatever stuff happened there. But you need to fire Scott Strickland. You need to clear everyone out except for maybe 5 or 6 good people. And frankly, this isn't a rebuild. This is a retool where you can go be competitive next year because this is a top 15 talent roster in the country, according to 247 Sports, who's the main recruiting mogul for college football. So long wind saying, I'll give it into Spark Notes here if you tuned out during that because I honestly talked for too long. Florida doesn't have a quarterback problem. You got to stick to one and go. Florida is not only above average, I would say elite at the wide receiver position. Florida is above average in the running backs. Florida is putrid. Whatever the lowest standard you could go at a power school in the trenches, they are. They don't have someone that can get pressure consistently. Oh, and by the way, I don't think the coaching staff is putting the right guys on the field defensively. LJ McCray, 5-star defensive lineman edge rusher, highest graded guy on PFF. Guess how many snaps, James? Just ballpark it.
25.
7.
Yeah.
7 snaps. And look, you got guys that have been there for 4 years. I understand they earn their keep, but sometimes you got to just put the best guys on the field. And that should be granted, right? That you should just put the best guys on the field. You're not. Number 12, DJ Douglas, had maybe the worst game from a safety that I've ever seen in my entire life. He got burned twice on miscommunications for touchdowns and got his ankles snatched by, I didn't even mention this, a backup quarterback starting with 45-minute notice before the game. Who, by the way, is better than Connor Wigman, A&M fans. I don't know what was happening. I was disappointed when they said Connor Wigman was not playing. I saw this guy convert a 2nd and 26 on the first drive and drop Shamar James, who's a top 5 linebacker in the country. I said, the game's over. I mean, this guy's freaking legit. This guy's Lamar Jackson coming out of nowhere. And it's ridiculous. But you want to know how bad the only other team that's worse than Florida in the SEC is? Florida goes to Mississippi State this week. 6-point favorites at Mississippi State. Mississippi State lost to Toledo 41-17. So long way of saying, I don't care what happens with Napier. It's only a matter of time before he gets fired, whether it's this week. Personally, I'd wait to the bye week to do it to give the interim coach more time. There's a bye week after this game, but there's stuff so much deeper than Billy Napier. I think there's stuff with Scott Strickland. If Scott Strickland hires this next head coach, there's a major problem. But I need to stop talking because that was like a 10-minute rant. But
you're good.
We're good on college football. We're going to move to the NFL. James, I know you said that you were at a wedding.
Yeah.
First of all,
I got to lock in though.
Did you?
The wedding was good.
Question. There you go.
The wedding was good.
Whoever was married, but
shout out to
James.
Ash.
Before we, there you go. Shout out Ashley. James, before we get to the Bears and Bucks, there's some would say some surprise 2-0 teams and some surprise 0-2 teams. I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. Which 2-0 team do you think is most likely to finish with a sub 500 record?
I'm gonna continue to ride with the Steelers. I can't be bought in quite yet with the Steelers. One, because Justin Fields is their quarterback, and I'm sick and tired of now. I'm on TikTok, and of course, after the Caleb Williams loss, it's like, times were great back in the day when we had this guy. Yeah, you don't remember how bad it was when we had Justin Fields. Okay, let's not react. Yeah. Let's not overreact. Here's the thing. For me to say that the Steelers are going to finish under 500 is a crazy statement because of the fact they have Mike Tomlin, and he never does that, and they're started at 2-0. But I can't believe in the Steelers yet. I mean, they beat 2 bad football teams. So other than that, I mean, the Saints may be up there. But other than that, I have to say that the worst 2-0 team probably is the Steelers, in my opinion.
Yeah, I actually don't hate that because I think they're being carried by what could be a potentially historic defense. Like, that's how good the Steelers defense is, and that's how good Mike Tomlin is as not only a head coach, but a defensive play caller, or a defensive head coach, which he is for the Steelers. But For me, 2-0 team that could finish under 500. I said the Saints were going to win 5 games coming into this year. And there's always a few teams every year. I always think of the Bucks. It happened to the Bucks when Ryan Fitzpatrick came. I think it was 2017. James, you should remember because they went to Chicago and Mitchell Trubisky threw 5 touchdowns, I think, in the first half. That was the year. And after 2 weeks, they went to New Orleans where they never won and beat them like 48-42. Then they beat the Eagles at home. This is when the Eagles were, that first Super Bowl with Nick Foles era. So so I'm always wary of these 2-0 teams. That it even happened to the Jaguars a few years ago. Started 1-0 and then they lost 15 straight. For me, I'm going to lean Vikings here.
Yeah.
Simply because I don't trust Sam Darnold as a quarterback. And now Justin Jefferson's hurt. It's saying it's not serious, but if he's out for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I mean, that's a 1-2 record. That's how dynamic he is. And honestly, I've never seen a wide receiver that dominates the way Justin Jefferson does. So I'm going to lean. If I had to pick one team that started 2-0 to finish sub 500, I'd go Vikings. Don't trust Sam Darnold fully. Don't trust Sam Darnold fully. Sorry, it's late here. But yeah, don't trust the Vikings to get over 500 this season. I mean, it's still a tough division, man. I think the Bears are going to wake up and hopefully learn how to block someone eventually. And the Packers, if they can just hover around 500 till Jordan Love comes back, it starts to get scary. Obviously, you got the Lions too. But James, we'll go to the Bears. Look, not a good offensive performance. I'll say how it is. I watched a lot of that game. I watched a little bit of it with Tanner. Then I watched a lot of it, back just back here at the apartment. But a few takeaways I have, quick takeaways, and I'll get to you. Don't overreact on Caleb. I think he'll be fine. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest issue is the offensive line and the fact that they cannot run the ball, frankly, at all. They might have a run here or there, but first of all, DeAndre Swift looks slow when there is a hole there, and the offensive line can't get any push, specifically the 2 guards. But I want to hear your take on all of it.
Yeah, I mean, like you had mentioned, I was at a wedding and I cut out, but shout out to Ashley and Lucas. They're never going to watch the podcast, but just to give them some love. Who cares?
Send it to them.
Send it to them. So the wedding was at 4. So, the ceremony was over. So I was sitting there at the table, just, glancing down here and there. And I was on the dance floor. Kyra posted a video of me dancing with my phone in my hand. And the wedding ended at like 9:30. So I was able to get back to the hotel and watch the second half. So I was able to really watch more of the game than I expected to. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, just because it's the Bears. But there's glaring issue. And you talk about there's one big issue. There's one issue. There is one issue with the Chicago Bears, and it's the offensive line. Caleb Williams is going to be fine, right? I was kind of hoping he wasn't going to need as much time as it looks like he's going to need to develop. But at the same time, he was getting pressured on 48% of his dropbacks yesterday. So if every other time he drops back and there's a guy in his face, what do you want him to do? I would borderline say that the offensive line is worse than it was for Justin Fields. And here's my concern. Our center, don't ask me his name. He's an average guy. They picked him up off the street because he's 300 pounds. He's gonna be the center for the Chicago Bears. That's whatever, right? I have one big issue, and I'll send you the video, Johnny, and if you put it in the pod, you'd put it in the pod. But if not, I don't really care. And it's Darnell Wright getting absolutely smoked. And here's my issue. He's the one guy that can't happen to. He was the 10th pick in the draft. You can't be bad. He was okay last season, and he looks slow. He looks he's not competent. Granted, like the guys he's going up against, they're Pro Bowl-esque, but so is everyone in the NFL. Everyone in the NFL is a special player. That's why they're there. So you need to start playing like it. And here's the thing, DeAndre Swift, you're a $9 million back. Go out there and run like it. You had 14 carries for 18 yards, and a lot of it's the line. But you're right, he does look slow. Like he gets past the first set of pressure, and next thing you know, he's still not getting anything. DeAndre Swift to me is really starting to genuinely just piss me off. Like we paid him $9 million to do what? Like I'm not saying if you hand me the ball 14 times, I'll get 18 yards. But I mean, I tell you what, I'd get pretty close.
I'm giving you a yard of carry. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. I'll just fall forward, right? Like I'll just leap over someone. Like So here's my thing. You got to look at yesterday. No Keenan actually really hurts because on those 3rd and 6s or whatever, you can put Keenan in the slot and it's an easy completion. Caleb Williams made a few tough throws. The one throw in particular was the one that was actually intercepted. His second interception was just a bad toss. The first interception, I get it. You're trying to make something happen. Another pick he threw was he tried to throw it across his arm. You're not in college anymore, Caleb. You can't do that. You can't run to the right side and try to chuck it to the left side of the field. And here's the thing. We saw him do that his entire career at USC, but you can't do that anymore for the Chicago Bears. So you got to give Caleb some time. I really look forward to this matchup this weekend against the Colts. I think it's a good matchup for the Bears. I was nervous. Honestly, the fact that the Bears had the ball to win this football game is a win, in my opinion. I didn't think there's a chance in hell we beat the Texans. I think the Texans are a damn good football team. Offensively, I think they're unreal. Obviously, Joe Mixon gets a little banged up, but comes back. I'm confident in this Bears team. It's going to take Caleb some time, but the Bears have plenty of draft picks in this upcoming draft. And if there's one position that you're going to target, and if it's not the offensive line, then something needs to happen. Because here's my thing. Ryan Poles, he was an offensive lineman. He's got to know what to look for. And I've walked the streets of Chicago, and I've seen some big dudes. Like, if they want to get someone for cheap, walk through the city, and I bet you they can find a left guard. It's the offensive line is horrendous. He was sacked 7 times, and a lot of the times, truthfully, it's like borderline. You're worried he's not going to get up because he's getting absolutely smoked. So the offensive line is the next piece for the Bears, because if you fix the offensive line, obviously Caleb's going to have some time and you get the rushing game going. But the fact is, you got to take a win away. You had the ball. You had an opportunity to go win the football game. You came up short. If Rome Rome, I will say that one more thing before you get into the Bucks. Rome's not been good. He's not been very good. Not running the right route on the last play. If he runs the right route, then we have an opportunity again, fresh set of downs and whatnot. But again, I don't know if maybe he did run the right route and Caleb threw a bad ball. But you got to give the Bears some time. This was a tough game no matter what. You look at you circle this game on the schedule like, oh, it's cool, we're playing Sunday night. But if you're a Bears fan, you got to be excited for this upcoming matchup against the Colts. I like the Bears in that matchup. I think it's a good test for both teams. But yeah, an upsetting loss. But at the end of the day, I told you the prediction. I thought the Texans were gonna beat us, and the fact is we had an opportunity to win the game, and that's all you can do. So
for sure. I think there's a few things that you said that's glaring, but Ryan Poles, I mean, everyone's getting his praises. First of all, he fleeced the Panthers. Bryce Young benched, not going to play.
Crazy.
I mean that's an absolute fleece. The one thing I regret is paying DeAndre Swift $9 million. I think Saquon's making like 10.5. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot more of $1.5 million difference between Saquon Barkley and DeAndre Swift. Another thing is, I mean, look, you get all these fancy toys. You re-sign or you extend DJ Moore, and you trade for Keenan Allen, and you draft Rome Odunze. But I mean, that's cool. Like, you have all these fancy toys for Caleb Williams. It does not matter when you're inside of your offensive line, and frankly, you're outside a lot too. Your entire offensive line,
every position's awful.
Gets beat. I mean, 40. I didn't know that number. A 48% pressure rate is an insane number. Like, that is insane. Yeah. But anyway, I'll talk about the Bucks. And
there you go. That's a big win. Hey, I'll give you all some praise. That's a big win.
Honestly, it is a massive win for the Bucks. The Bucks are missing like 5 defensive starters, so this isn't like something. So Antoine Jr. is the best safety in football. He's out. Kalijah Cansey, first round pick a year ago, all rookie team, whatever. He's out. In the first half, Vita Vea, who's the best defensive tackle in football, he's out. Missed the entire second half. And on offense, our right tackle, Luke Gedeke, who apparently is the most valuable player on the team, is out. So Aiden Hutchinson gets 4.5 sacks, strictly just because our right tackle is not fast enough, our backup, to stop him. And then defensively, we got these young guys coming in, just stepping up. Christian Izien heck of a game from him. Undrafted guy out of Syracuse 2 years ago, starting the nickel last year, gets a spot taken by our third rounder this year. Comes back and was huge. He was one of our highest graded defensive backs or defensive players by PFF. And look, there's something different about this team. I've seen good Bucks teams the last 5 years after seeing horrific Bucks teams the previous 15 years of my life. And this team feels different. When Tom Brady was there, it was like, look, you're going to be good because Brady's there. You're going to go, you're going to do your thing. You got Brady, blah, blah. There's a different type of togetherness in this team, and there's a different type of confidence in this team, and it's from Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield had a heck of a game yesterday. He's had a heck of a first 2 games, and this might be a hot take, but I truly think that the Bucks can compete for a Super Bowl. And the NFC, they did it last year, and they were a play away from being in the NFC Championship game. There's no reason why they shouldn't win the NFC South, have a home playoff game, and then once you get in, anything can happen. They got 2 receivers that can go, and I'm going to keep saying it. I said it in the preseason, Chris Godwin was going to have a monster year, 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns. Guess what? He had 117 yards in the first half and a touchdown yesterday. Excuse me. He's over 200 yards, 2 touchdowns already on the season. Mike Evans is Mike Evans. Once they get those pieces back on defense, it's going to be a top 5 to 7 unit. And going into Detroit in a hostile place without 5 starters and holding them to only 1 touchdown, I mean, that beyond massive. Props to Todd Bowles, even though I thought his clock management still just horrific.
Oh, my God. So
should never.
They tried to lose the game. They tried to lose that football game.
But him as a defensive play caller, masterful, especially in the red zone. So I'm going to give them all their flowers. But huge win. Huge win for the Bucks. You got Denver coming into Ray J this week. Should be 3-0. And then Philly comes in the week after. So, I mean, look, the Bucks have a stretch where they play Baltimore, Kansas City, and San Francisco all in a row. So you got to stack up the wins now because, look, the hard part of the schedule is coming up. So, again, can't overstate how big of a win it was. But, look, James, unless you got anything else, that's kind of all I got.
Yeah. Well, my thing is the Lions, right, last week, to me, weren't very impressive, but they got the job done. And this week, and mainly that was because they didn't get Amon-Ra involved. And I tell you what, they got him involved this week, but it didn't seem to matter, right? The thing is, and we said it last season about Jared Goff, and I said it, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league because of the fact that he doesn't turn the football over. And once I said that, the guy turned into Sunday. And yeah, exactly. Once I said that, the guy became interception pro. So so maybe I just got to speak on it, and then guys will start sucking. But anyway, like you said, Jared Goff, 2 interceptions. That's the difference in the game. Yeah. Amon-Ra might have had 120 yards, but I mean, Jared Goff might have thrown for 300. But one, he's thrown 55 times, and the other thing is he's throwing 2 interceptions. So if you look at the box score of this game, I mean, the glaring thing is the interceptions for Jared Goff, and that's probably the game, right? That's the game right there. But yeah, you hit it right in the head. Chris Godwin's been unreal. Kind of reminds me of watching him 2 years ago.
Yep, exactly.
And so, shout out to him. Shout out to you for that call. But yeah, the Bucks are dangerous, man. They're that team. They're that gritty team in the NFL that you look at them and you're like, I don't want to watch the Bucks.
Yeah.
Truthfully, I don't want to watch the Bucks. But they're just gritty. They find ways to win football games. Even though sometimes it looks like they try to, give them out because of clock management and whatnot. But shout out to the Bucks, man. You got yourself a good team, and man, I hope one day the Bears can be just like you guys. So
easy team to root for too, right? With you got the whole Baker story, obviously.
Yeah, Mike and Evans, I love Baker Mayfield. I love Baker Mayfield. So.
Just an easy team to root for. And it's good to have in Tampa, especially since the Rays suck. But
no doubt.
And we're not going to get into baseball, but
no.
Look, guys, if you made it to the end here, thanks for hanging with us. Late night with Backyard Banter. It should be Backyard Banter after dark. Who knows? Ooh. If you see anyone watching the Lisle area, if you see Tanner roaming the streets, and
Tanner might not know where he is. I mean,
or he might not. But if Tanner, anyone at Maple Avenue Pub, if there's anyone that's in the Ogden Avenue
he might have walked there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. Anyone with that Jewel Osco up there down up that way. But all jokes aside, Tanner will be back for our episode coming out Friday, and we'll have full college football. Big week in college football. Some marquee NFL games as well. So if you guys made this far, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, send it to someone, and we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.